Okay, I guess I'm live here. I am live. I can see the timer going right now. I sat on my glasses, so they're a little crooked. That's okay. It's not about being fancy here or anything like that. Uh, I don't take this seriously. I don't care about subscribers. I don't care about likes. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, fine as well. If you subscribe, great. If you do, because this is sort of me just sorting things out, and I've been doing this for several years now, and it got more frequent. Basically, I believe around the time of 2020 or so, and I can give you some background on this, but I kind of want to get quickly into this so that you know whether or not you're going to be wasting your time, because that's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to waste your time. Better to take off the glasses because they're a little bit distracting to me as far as looking looking crooked and stuff like that. Um, the title is The Meaning of Life. And so the first thing I want to do is give you the answer, and then I will expound on this answer, because I don't. It's up to you whether you stay or not. But I am going to expound on it, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. I'm going to try to provide you with some insight with regards to the thoughts that I have been able to coalesce in my brain over the process of the 66 years that what will soon be 60, right? 66 years of being around. Okay. And around really means around. Now, I'm not going to say that there aren't people that have haven't had lives that have been more incredible than mine. I certainly know that there are. But I also know that, the experiences that I've had in my life have been incredibly unique. And they are the basis of what you see right now. What you are seeing is a composite of all the things that I have been through in my life. And so, without keeping you in suspense anymore, the meaning of life is there is no meaning. I I don't watch a lot of television anymore. Oh, I used to be a huge consumer, culture consumer. I mean, I was like a sponge ever since I was little. I would just soak in whatever and everything that I would see: movies, books, television, shows. So I mean, I'm a decent partner in a trivia contest. But I kind of stopped going to those because of certain things as well. Um, but the reason I say this is because I do occasionally watch certain things, or that pique my curiosity, if you will. And I will tell you what I spend more time doing. But it was watching Dune. Now, amusingly enough, I saw Dune with a friend right when it first came out, and my reaction to it was, I really didn't like it, and I kind of look back on the reasons that was the case, and I think it has a lot to do with the sound editing, where I think the sort of the music comes up front, and the voices are really low and whispers, at least to me, because I have bad hearing, and that's not all because of music, but certainly some of it is. Um, but I did watch it a second time. I I don't even have a subscription to Netflix. My one of my kids does, and fortunately they haven't disowned me yet, which they have in many ways. Um, and it's my fault too. I'm not going to give them shit for how they respond to me and my behavior or anything like that. I accept full responsibility, for any of the attitudes that those closest to me have. But I'm not going to, I'm not going to cry over spilt milk or anything like that. I'm just going to carry on and do what I can do until I can't do it anymore. Um uh, but there was a quote in the movie that I caught this time around. and I was paying special attention, that said, and I might get this a little wrong, but it says, the mystery of life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to experience. And this couldn't be any more accurate as to the way I have come to sort of discover what this is all about. Okay. Um, it's a very, very profound quote. I don't know. It may very well be a quote from Frank Herbert's book. I never read his book. I had friends that were reading it when I was in college, and I would see them hanging around the greasy spoon on the countertop, and drinking coffee and drinking eating their or reading their science fiction books. And at that time, I was more in the dealing with the academic realm, and I do have a Bachelor of Arts, but it's interdisciplinary, and I focused on humanities, which kind of means that I've been observing humans for a long time. That's been my mindset. I was like, I don't want to say like I was like Goodwill Hunting, okay, but in a certain way, I was this sort of underprivileged character. And when I went to school, I didn't go to school to see what kind of career I could have, but I went just because I wanted to learn more. I had learned up to when I was little. I actually, for a good portion of my life, I come from a broken family, and my mom left my father and took us to another country without knowing. And that other country would be Peru, because my mom is Peruvian. And we lived in my grandmother's house. My grandmother was not necessarily rich. She was left a widow 5 years into her marriage. But she was a very savvy woman. For me, she is one of the most, I'll get a little emotional here, one of the most heroic people I've ever met. Um, and myself and uh, my my mother and my brother and two sisters, we basically lived in one room for a good portion. And one of my aspirations when we lived in it was because my grandmother had a boarding house. That's how savvy she was, and she rented the house. She didn't own it, but she found a very large, I guess we would call it a brownstone, in Lima, on a very busy street. And she rented all the rooms out to boarders, and we had a very unique set of people. So there's a portion of my life that I would almost equate in a certain way to Richard Pryor's life. I heard, read some things where it said that he was sort of grew up in a bordello. And so even though a boarding house is not a bordello, although there might have been one room where something similar to that could have been happening. For the most part, there were a very, very interesting mix of people, and this was sort of when I was 10 years old, 8 years of age, and where things are, um, you know, they're not coalesced in your brain. You're just, and like I said, I'm sort of a person that's just always, been observant, and I've never really took to authoritarian mandates or edicts that says you have to do this, you have to do that. I was very confounded by a lot of the information that the adults were giving me at the time. And so I do think that a lot of my life was dedicated to finding the answer. And so it's funny that the answer that I got is that there is no answer. But again, I'm going to expound on that just a little bit more. Okay. Um, because even though what the situation that we are looking at here is that if we could call life a game of some sorts, the name of the game would be control. Control. And spell that with a Control, control, big letters, all of them, control. Everybody wants to control you. Everybody. Your parents, your siblings, your cousins and peers and teachers and government and religion. Everybody wants to control you because you are a resource to them. And it can be a financial resource, it can be an emotional resource, it can be a psychological resource, which it is really as an emotional, but that's we can talk about that more if you want. But the name of the game is control. And my realization, see, because a lot of my life I've been out of control. I was like a wild animal, loose, that really didn't respond to anything and did whatever the fuck they wanted for a certain period of time until, if you notice the thumbnail that I used as a cover, until I was in a band called Stark Raving Mad, or um, in the mid 80s, and I co-produced. I was one of the original members per se. The band had actually existed as a called Pissed Youth, and they were on tour, and they sort of blew up. Uh, uh, they had played at CBGB's. That's where I met the singer. And I went to, I said, when's your next show? I was in New York. I had gone there on my own, and he actually, I was crashing in a skinhead crash pad in the Lower East Side. That was basically the guy that had the lease on the apartment, and the basement apartment was Tony, the vocalist in a band called Ultraviolence. And I played CPGBs a couple times, but anyway, I think that Stark Raving Mad is a good sort of monument to my insanity and to my, how just where my, and I've been a reactionary, I've been a leftist, and again because I've been in Peru. Uh, and I've heard the ideas of Che Guevara, and I've read Marx, and but that's not the only thing. And I didn't just limit myself to those things, and I can see other things as well. And my father comes from a family that has been basically nested in the on the east side of Pennsylvania, that whole the Poconos and Delaware Valley Gap and all that. I mean, for basically for centuries, as far as I understood, except for the ones that decided to leave and venture out. I had some aunts that decided, or great aunts that went to New York and different things like that. But for the most part, everybody was born in there. And lo and behold, and this is a blue working class family. It was, and my father and his brothers, they were all members of the military. My father was in the Army, and his other brother was in the Navy, and his oldest brother was in the Air Force, and I think his sister was in the Navy as well, but I'm not absolutely certain. I've lost touch with them. Actually, most of them, they're all dead except for the sister. She's alive, but that's another story. Uh, so the essence of this is that, and then sadly, I had a younger brother who was 6 years younger than me, and when I was 32 years old, the band had stopped. They were actually too crazy for me. They were too insane. There's a lot of sort of abusive behavior. I don't know. Sometimes when you sort of come into a new scenario where these people, they all knew each other, so I was the guy that they picked on. I've always, one of the things about me that's very true. It's always been open, and I've kind of looked, and I've always tried to, just take the information and just see and observe, and without really necessarily judging, but sort of trying to extract information from that. But at the end of the day, sort of the Stark Raving Mad album that we put out, if you want to call it that, 15 songs and about 12 and a half minutes long, and it's at 45 speed, so it's a 12-inch at 45 speed. It's sort of sort of my monument, sort of the peak that I reached for that particular phase of my life. When I was 18, I actually returned to this country, and I felt like I was like like one of those greyhound dogs at the racetrack that's just waiting for the gates to open, and their mouths are salivating and waiting for that, trying to catch that rabbit. And as soon as the gates are open, it's like, full force. And, and while I was in Peru, I had friends that would tell me, wow, the United States, and you're from the United States. And they would glamorize and romanticize drugs and pot and Woodstock and all these other elements of what of the late '60s, or late '60s, early '70s, which is basically the entire '70s, or a good portion of the '70s is the time that I spent in Peru. Although we kind of went back and forth at different times in my life, and I did learn English and Spanish twice. Now I am considered a native speaker in both languages, and people are very surprised when I hear them speaking Spanish, and all of a sudden I'll chime in and go, "Whoa!" Um, but so I kind of was in a band. I left the band. I was in different other bands in New York. I went back to New York. I actually put out another recording with a really cool, talented guitarist who's in Austin right now. His name Tom Cuddy. We actually created a flexi disc, which we put into a magazine that was edited by, where the editor was Seth Tabachman, who I think he's one of the curators of editorial cartoons and the New York Times, or one of those papers. He was, at that time when I was in New York, we could see his stenciled graffiti art all over the place. It had messages like, the landlords eating eating the tenants, and cops abusing people and stuff like that. So very anti-authoritarian. And World War III Illustrated was a platform that gave a lot of really good science fiction illustrators a platform, and they went on to a few of them went on to illustrate in Heavy Metal magazine. And I really haven't kept up with them, who's doing what, but Peter Cooper and Sue Coe are two of the names that pop in my head right now. But there were many, many more. This is the time around Michael Basquiat, and there was all kinds of things. I was really immersed when I lived in New York. I was immersed in it all. I was like right in the thick of it. I've met people, like Harley. I actually was there when at the inception of the Cro-Mags. I was hanging around Tompkins Square Park, and I ran into Harley. Was it the year before last, over at the Muddy Roots Festival in Nashville, which one of the co-editors of a fanzine that I used to put out in Missouri, we called Misery. He invited me out there because his son couldn't meet the obligation, so I lucked out, and he kind of asked me if I could meet him. And he drove from Missouri, and I flew into Nashville, and we met up, and we saw a concert in Nashville at the Ryman Theater, which was Shakti. And then we went to the Muddy Roots Festival, and I had a blast there. It was the first festival I was ever been to. And so anyway, when once the album came, I did go to Peru in the '80s. I was doing shows at a club called the Axiom in Houston. A friend of mine that I met with Stark Raving Mad when I toured from New York, and we ended up in Houston, befriended JR. And he liked me enough, and we hit it off, that he actually flew into New York and asked me if I would be interested in helping him with his club. And I was very, very interested. But at the same time, for some reason, I was very interested into the idea of returning to Peru, because I hadn't been there in 12 years, and I had a good job in New York. I was working in a restaurant called the NoHo Star. And but I said yes, and I told him, but with the condition, just know that I'm not going to stay around for very long, because I really want to go to Peru. So I went down there and booked some really incredible shows, and then I went back to Missouri to try to get more money. During all this time, I sort of subsidized my hedonistic lifestyle with restaurant work, mostly primarily in the kitchen. And even in the kitchen, I, ascended heights. I'm sort of a person that's never been satisfied being where they are. And I always felt there was room for improvement. And so I would improve, and I was actually paid under the table. Because the people at the restaurant that I worked at, the NoHo Star, which is no longer around, and actually closed its doors, I think around 2019. I come to find out they liked me so much, and I worked Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning, which is incredible that I even managed doing that, considering all the drugs and my, again, hedonistic lifestyle. It was just an insane time, and I guess my body being young or whatever, I sort of was able to absorb the impact of all those things. And so then I went to Peru, and I was working as a teacher, teaching English as a second language in a military academy that was open to civilians. That was one of the jobs I had. I actually worked two jobs, and it was a time of hyperinflation. And at that time, I met a woman, and we didn't really get to know each other really that well. We just went on dates, and it was sort of like more of a physical attraction. And I returned to the States, and I went back to Missouri. And it was almost like at that point, I was like a has-been, somebody who was, and I was just 31, 32 years old. And then my brother committed suicide. And my brother, I was basically just couch surfing. I was at a friend's, and drinking beer and smoking pot, and going out and seeing bands and stuff like that. We actually had the guys from Jesus Lizard stay at this friend's house. I was one, like, this guy that would just always felt connected to bands. And so whenever they came in town, if they needed a place to stay, I would try to find this place to stay. I would invite them into other people's homes, because I couldn't take them to my own. And even Steve Albini, he was one of the people. Actually managed to get him kicked out of a house that we called the Mansion, or that I wasn't a part of, but it was a huge place in Columbia, Missouri. And him, and I can't remember which man he was with at the time, they were kicked out of there anyway. So it was kind of like the end of the line, and I really didn't know where I was going. I had bad hearing, and it was, and I had really no direction, and it could have been the end of me, really, at that point. I just have no idea what would happen. And then my mom shows up with her then partner, and tells me that my brother committed suicide. So basically, it devastated me. This is my younger brother. I felt all kinds of guilt because of that situation, and it was an issue that I didn't resolve for years and years and years. We went to, it happened in Maine. He was actually staying with my sister, who's closest to me in age, who's the only one that's still alive in our immediate nuclear family. So mom is dead, dad is dead, brother's dead, and the youngest sister is dead. It's just me and her, and she's 10 and a half months younger than me. So that's called Irish twin. And, it was devastating for her, something that affects her, still. Again, devastated, just devastated. And my littlest sister was going through some problems with a relationship, and I decided to follow her to Maryland. And she was working at Suzuki as some kind of secretary or something like that. She was a very feisty little girl, and they decided to move the offices to Atlanta, the Suzuki offices to Atlanta. And they told her, look, we're not going to relocate you, but if you want to go down there on your own, then we'll have a job for you. And so, that's what we did. We loaded up the truck and moved to Beverly, if you will. We went down to Atlanta, and I thought that I would have, at that point in time, the thing that I was thinking, because I was bilingual, was that I would end up, getting some kind of work where I would be able, and that was the goal that I had, to exercise my language skills. And lo and behold, I mean, by a complete fluke, and again, now I am dealing with the trauma of my brother's death, and I really not seeing any professional help. I have no medical insurance or anything like that, and drinking was sort of something that was not only big in my father's family's culture, drinking beer and whiskey and stuff like that, but also in Latin American culture. All this drinking rum and alcohol and stuff like that. And I probably started drinking right around in my high school, my last year of high school. I think I had, yeah, I did my first, what I would call my first big gulp of rum. I actually had what they call la chata, a small little bottle of rum, and they had stores that were convenience stores that would sell to anybody that looked old enough. There was no control or anything like that. And I was with a few friends, and we each had our own bottle, and I just downed my bottle in one swoop, and I fell to the ground on my knees, and I started laughing. And the house was sort of moving like this as we entered the doorway. I did survive, and amusingly enough, I was actually helping a friend of mine who was sicker, and I was holding him up while he was vomiting in the toilet. But so I was in Atlanta, and I was had different jobs. I was still sort of reliant on restaurant work, and I had different jobs in that sphere as well. But I picked up a job as a chauffeur, and I picked up the vice president of what was then Bank of America, which turned or Nations Bank, which turned into Bank of America later. And the woman, for whatever reason, Cynthia um, Hayes, she asked me, is this what you do for a living? And I said, no, it's just a temporary until I find something that is a little bit more aligned with my skills. She said, oh, what's your skills? I said, well, I'm bilingual. She says, have you ever thought about working the phone? I said, well, I did send my resume over to AT&T or Mahabel or whatever it was at the time. Uh, and she said, well, I'm the director, blah, 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 of, a program that's called the 401k. Do you know what that is? No, I have no idea. Okay, well, never mind. It doesn't matter. She said, here's my card. When you get a chance, send me your resume. And so I did. I got back to the place that I was living with some weird roommates. And I really was on the verge of suicide myself. Uh, and I get this postcard in the mail like 1 year later. It says we want to interview you for a job. And I go, and they practically hand me the job, except for they found out that I had not paid my student loans. And they said, you have to make a commitment to pay your student loans, get into an agreement, show us the agreement, and we'll give you the loan. And, they paid me more than I had ever been making at that point in time. This is in the early 90s, and that would be $26,000 a year. That's what I was making. And they gave me all these books. They put me in a room. They said, here, read this, learn as much as you can. And then after 3 days, I said, okay, we think you're ready to go ahead and get on the phones. And that was, again, so I was in the financial industry. And for about 18 years, I grew and grew and grew and grew in that area. And I was actually an analyst for working at a Citigroup subsidiary, which is a small Solomon Smith Barney, which I didn't start there. I started with a place called Robinson Humphrey. Again, all this is wild because the rug has been pulled out from me out from under me so many times, and I've always had to sort of readjust, or scramble and scramble and scramble. Oh, well, I forgot to mention this. Once one of the things that I thought would help me in my life was to get married. To sort of give some stability. So the woman that I mentioned earlier, I actually, it was not quite a mail order bride, but in a certain way it was, because I did send for her. They wanted me the government wanted me to go and marry her there or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I got a special visa. And once she got in, it was called a K-1 visa, and we had to get married within a 90-day window, and we did. And so we've had some children, but this was not a normal relationship, and the way it bore out was incredibly tragic, and I'm still sort of dealing with the fallout from all of that. But again, no regrets or anything like that. I mean, what is done is done. And this is one of the things that I've learned. To that point, I was, let's see. So, I mean, so I was an analyst. I actually had what's called a FINRA Series 7 license, which actually, and I worked for one broker who had a book of business of about $500 million. And it was my responsibility to analyze all the investments that were held in all of the accounts, which were what we refer to as institutional accounts, so large money accounts. Most of the accounts were held. We didn't really want to mess with anything that was less than $10 million. And I had all kinds of, and again, I had to oversee the performance, and then also analyze the performance, and help develop material for sales, and account management and investment changes and stuff like that. But I was like in the thick of that process. So I did learn a lot about the investment markets. So what I'm trying to set the stage for you here is, there's different cultural experiences. I grew up in Peru. Then in the States, again, different cultural experience. I moved to Missouri, which I had not been in. I grew up in the New Jersey, west side of New Jersey, east side of Pennsylvania. We were living on the New Jersey side. Um, so I had that cultural experience. A large metropolitan city like Lima, and then I'll go to Missouri, which is a small college town, which with a population of what, like at that time, I think it was 65,000 or something like that, with the students, I believe. I've kind of gone back to review that. And, one of the things I said was that, when I went to college, and, it was all funded with grants and student loans and work study programs and stuff. Um, I put my nose to the grindstone, but I still partied. It was insane. And I really made it, by the skin of my teeth, if it weren't for my mother, who just insisted that, I get an education. And so I did at least get that degree. Um, but I didn't get a degree in economics or anything like that. But here I was doing things that people go to business school to do, and make a living at. And I sort of came in through the back door. And some of the people in the company would talk about me like I was this novelty. Here's a guy that was a chauffeur that now works with us, but he speaks Spanish. And it was like the first time I had the first Spanish call, they all sort of ran to the room where I was on the phone, just to sit around and listen and stuff like that. Uh, but so I did grow, and there was all these changes that happened in this place as well. And but when my brother died, killed himself, it wasn't the last time, and that really wasn't the first time that I was shocked by somebody's death. But then, there's a procession of people that were dying. My wife's brother was basically killed by a hitman in Peru. And wow, we actually saw the news reported from Peru while I was living here in where I am right now in Florida. We saw his body on the street where he was shot, just covered with a white sheet. Saw that on the news. I mean, that was really, really shocking. He was kind of like a womanizer. He had also been a drug mule, very handsome dude, that kind of looked like a Rasta, like Bob Marley in a way, tall, handsome, and, kind of would catch the ladies' eyes and stuff like that. He took advantage of it, and he messed with the wrong person, which was the wife of like one of the officers of police department. And that officer hired a hitman, and they just came up behind one, and he was waiting for a bus, and bow, what the Spanish is called quemarropa, and just boom, right in the head. But then, I had my sister, my youngest sister. She was in a car wreck, and she had been in a bad and somewhat of an abusive relationship, where she had two kids, and then there was all the drama that was involved with that. Then my mom was in an accident, in a vehicle accident when she was with her husband and they were traveling, and he died from blunt force trauma, a pickup truck that hit him, right. They were in just a regular sedan, and it was a pickup truck, and they were just crossing the road to get onto the exit, and she broke her clavicle and had to, the car spun out of control and stuff like that. Then she died, or my father died from lung cancer. My grandmother died when we were going to celebrate her 80th birthday. I mean, it's just a cavalcade of all this shock. I mean, I received the call from the police at like 3:30 in the morning that said my sister was involved. My youngest sister was involved. She was like 10 years younger. Was involved in an accident, and they told me this, and I'm like, holy shit. And I have to tell my mom, I have to tell my mom this. And she had, you know, already lost her husband just 1 year before that. And this happens. And then my mom got pancreatic cancer and died within 3 months, 3.5 months. I mean, it was just brutal, brutal. And at the same time, I'm in this bad relationship and all this shit is going on, you know. So I tried to adjust to reality as best I can, but again, never getting treatment, always self-medicating, a lot of vices, gambling, smoking, drinking, drugs, pot, you name it, man. And, all the experience that I've had is, crazy, crazy, crazy at different times. Like I said, when the marriage was trying to put some stability, but even in the marriage, what I realized that, and this is kind of goes back to one of the things that I told you at the beginning, what this is all about. It's about control. And one of the things that came to light, as far as the nature of the relationship that I was in with this woman that I barely knew, was that she just wanted to control everything. Everything, my friendships, my movements, just wanted complete control. And then just told me straight out, you are supposed to make money, take care of me. I should do whatever the fuck I want, but not in a harlot type of way, but just financially she wanted to work, and whatever money she made was hers. It wasn't for, she didn't see marriage as a cooperation at all. Uh, and so I'm kind of still dealing with that. And this, what it actually did is, I mean, I went into some mild psychosis, manias, getting treatment, depressions, you name it, man. I've been at the very, 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 very bottom, which, some people have talked about. And one of the things that you realize when you get to that point is that if you can't help yourself, it's over. It's over. Because, like I said, everybody wants to control you. Everybody. And if you can't control yourself, you're fucked. And when I'm saying controlling yourself, I'm talking about, controlling the alcohol you consume, which is really, there's no benefit at all to drinking alcohol. Zero, zero, zero benefit. Why do I say that? Because alcohol, and this is something I learned from a pot book, actually, how to cook pot back in the 70s. Alcohol as a base chemical. Okay, first of all, it has no chemical agents or properties inside of it at all. Zero, zero chemical agents that are therapeutic in any way or benign. None. Okay. If you think of what alcohol is in its purest form, it's a cleanser, it's a sanitizer. Okay. There is no, so, and, as weird as it may seem, our insides are not sanitary. There's all kinds of crap inside of our bodies, and actually some of that crap is good crap, good bacteria, good enzymes, and there's some, and so to consume alcohol, see, alcohol dilutes fats and oils. Of course, you know that there's some fats that are good for your body. Well, why would you want to dilute a fat? There's something that's good for your body. You don't. If you just take beer and say it's 3% beer or 5% beer, if you were just to take everything out of it and just consume the 5%, I mean, it's not going to taste good. Okay. And if you have a hangover is a symptom of poisoning. And so you know that you can get alcohol poisoning by drinking a bottle. And I am very lucky because in many times I've drank enough where I should have been poisoned. I was poisoned actually, throwing up and stuff like that. But I survived. I didn't die from it. And you know what they say. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And here I am, and I do think I'm stronger at this point. Now, the other thing that I've noticed is that in domestic life, and you probably can, is domestic life is it's obesity is systemic. Okay, and if you notice that if a person is married, very often, not all the times. I'm not saying this is 100% of the times, and some people's bodies are a little bit more predisposed to. They're a little bit more predisposed towards obesity, and I think, and I'm one of them. Um, the routine systemic doesn't mean that there's like steps 1, 2, 3, 4, but there's behavioral routines that are part of being married or part of taking care of kids or part of working that basically sort of make us forget about ourselves. Now, this is where I kind of start getting into the nitty gritty and explain to a friend of mine, and I'm sorry it took so long to get to this point. Well, actually, right before I jump into that, one of the things that changed, sort of put me on the path to what I would call an enlightenment of sorts, is the fact that Donald Trump won in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. Now, at that point in time, I was partisan. I'm not anymore. But at that time, I was. And to me, it came as a shock because, prior to that, and I had been sort of engaged politically, as far as voting and looking and, advocating, especially in the 80s when I was more of a sort of a radical and I was, left leaning and I was involved in a lot of different things with anarchists and, co-ops and stuff and social, integration type of things. Jesse Jackson and all the things that were happening then. But if anybody paid attention, the things that Donald Trump was saying and the things that they were catching him, like, the tape about, what he was talking about, grabbing them, and just so many things that he said were disqualifying, and he won. So when that happened, it told me, wait a minute. There's something else going on here. This is not normal. And at that time, I weighed close to 250 pounds. Now I weigh around 160. And so that woke me up, but it shocked me first. I was sort of in a state of shock and I didn't know what to do or whatever. But when I hit my 60th birthday, when I was 1950, I was born in 1959, when I hit my 60th birthday, they made me look like a goofball and gave me the glasses with the 60 and things like that. I had a glass of wine, but I couldn't finish it. And I had already been in a process of getting off alcohol because I had medications that I had to take for my depression and stuff like that, and it wasn't good to mix. And some people do, unfortunately. We make wrong decisions all the time. Anyway, so it was like almost like a light bulb came on, and I knew, number one, if I was going to remain at the weight that I was, then I was going to be a victim. I knew I would be a victim in some form or fashion if I was out of shape, if I didn't feel good, if I was depressed. It just told me, and I'm going to move this, and it might make some noise. Erica. I knew that something had to be done, but I didn't know what. And I had this strange thing happened to me, and it was very bizarre, where all of a sudden the food that I was eating just had this strange texture. The food, that the garbage that we're sort of trained to like. Um, all the breads and the pastas and the rice and the meat. It had a texture in my mouth that was really strange, and it didn't feel good. So I kind of stopped eating it. I was like on a diet of Dr. Pepper for a while, until a friend of mine, I was hanging out with a couple that I know, and that did help me out in through some difficult times, and I'm very appreciative of that, and I still owe them. Um, I They said, look, I don't want you coming around here if you're going to be you're just not eating properly or whatever, and this is not good. You have to eat. So that got me into sort of this mindset of, okay, I need to find a way to replace the garbage that I can't eat, and eat things that are good for me, like juice, and I would buy some protein powders and stuff like that. And then I started to walk, and even that process was slow. I wasn't walking. When the first time I tried to walk, I probably took 25 steps until I looked at my feet. I felt insecure, and I went back indoors. Every day I kept trying, and I kept trying to go further, but I didn't just walk. I walked with a purpose. I walked, trying to like pass a goal, even if like, I'm going to walk for 10 minutes. I'm going to walk for 15 minutes. I'm going to walk for 15 minutes in X amount of time, or at X speed. And I just every time kept challenging myself, challenging myself, and people would look at me and they kind of laugh, because I was like waving my arms, going up and down the street, and I would wear full clothes. I wasn't wearing necessarily exercise clothes or anything like that. I was just dressed, and I was sweating, and I was listening to music, and I was sometimes talking to people. I remember having a conversation with a friend and said, I don't know who I am. I had an actual personality crisis. The New York Dolls personality crisis. I had one, where I didn't know who the fuck I was anymore. Um, so this anyway, at some point I decided to start to run, but it was like I didn't know if I could run. So what I did was I would mix it up. I would um, I would basically walk really fast for a mile, and then afterwards I would run for a mile and see which would be faster. And for a long time I was actually walking faster than I was running. Eventually that flipped. So basically, since 2020, I've been jogging, I've been running, and a lot. And I ran my first a half marathon in December of 2020. And then I ran another one in March of 2021. Since then, I've just been running 10Ks, but I just do it on my own. I don't do it for competition purposes or anything like that. I don't give a shit about competing. In fact, it costs money, and I don't like money. That's the thing. I don't like money. Um, and I try to get by with as little as possible. Because, see, the more artificial needs you have, again, the easier you are to control. And that's, again, the name of the game. The name of the game is control. And the less able you are to control your artificial wants, they're not needs, most of them are wants, then you're fucked. Okay. You're completely screwed. Um, Now, one of the things that I did, also trying to sort of fix my marriage and accommodate the demands of my spouse, again, because I didn't know what was happening in the relationship. I didn't know who she was that I quit a very good job where I was almost making three figures with, with the benefits and everything like that. I was making more than, I was making six figures, excuse me. Uh, but I quit the job and tried to start a business, and that failed miserably. And, of course, a learning process there. But this is where it all sort of comes together. And what I'm saying, that what I know is this, is that people who are secure, whether or not they're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. because there is actually no right or wrong. And maybe I'll get into that in a little bit. But people who are financially secure, who are socially secure because of their network of people that they know, because they all think alike and they support each other, they become arrogant. They believe their own bullshit. So somebody asked me, what do you mean by it's not just billionaires' greed? It's exactly what I mean. Billionaires aren't the only ones that are greedy. Your neighbors are greedy. Everybody around you wants things, and they want to surround themselves with things, and they want to surround themselves with, doing things. They want to watch, sports, and they want to have, jerseys. It's a very territorial thing too. They want all these shoes and watches and status symbols and wallets and, cars and fancy cars, and it's really sad actually, because, and again, I was part of this, so being part of it and then pulling myself away, I can see it for what it is that, we become comfortable in where we are, and that comfort is something that we don't want to give up, and we defend that comfort. Whatever mental processes you develop to get to where you are, and if you feel secure there, then you're going to defend that, and you're going to defend the mindset that helped bring you to that point, and you're not going to accept what other people say, because you have been successful in one form or another, and this includes, preachers, anybody who is comfortable in their life, anybody, and even some people who are not comfortable in their life, because they're always scratching and scrambling for more. They want more, they want more, they want more, and more is not the answer. More is not the answer. You see, what I found to be the answer, I'm going to make a little noise, hopefully it disappears, uh, is the answer is here. It's inside here. It's not here. This is bullshit. And this is how you get manipulated. This is when people try to use your feelings to extort you into conforming into a certain type of, that's an extortion. It's blackmail. If people will use feelings to manipulate you. They will deprive you of good feelings as punishment. Life is about rewards and punishments, or at least that's not what it's about, but that's how the stage is set. The stage is set with rewards and punishments, and you're taught about the rewards and punishments from the time that you are little. Okay? God is going to reward you or punish you. Santa Claus is going to reward you or punish you. The Easter Bunny is going to reward you or punish you. He just punishes you by not giving you shit. Your teachers will reward you or punish you. The church will reward you or punish you. The government will reward you or punish you. Your parents will reward you or punish you. It's set up with this false dichotomy. It is a false dichotomy. If you really think about the Bible and you look at it carefully and you think about the religious arguments that are used, the biggest religion is, well, you don't know, so you can't deny God. So there's this sort of absolutist assertion that this is, anybody who's a believer says God exists, God exists, God exists. You can't say that God doesn't exist. Maybe I can't. But what I can say is that your definition of God does not exist. The way you see God with your primitive brain, it's not it. See, we are finite beings. And so it is ludicrous, completely ludicrous, to think that any finite being can understand what an absolute power is. And one of the sayings that I came up with is that order is not sustainable in a chamber of chaos. You know, our life looks like they're orderly. You know, we don't see all the movement and everything that's happening on it. We don't. You know, this is, I don't, it's not by design or anything. It it is what it is. Okay. Again, the mystery of life is not a problem to be solved because it can't be solved. I'm going to move this wire again. Okay. Uh, it's it's not something that can be solved. So this makes it very difficult for people to control you if you understand this particular condition of reality. Notice that I didn't say truth, okay? Because nobody knows the truth. We call ourselves human, but we don't know what the fuck we are. That is what we call ourselves. The only thing that we can understand is that we are sentient creatures that have the ability to manipulate uh, the environment to a degree that other creatures do not have. And the downside of that is that we've gotten to the point where the environment that we created actually controls us instead of us controlling the environment. You want to get back to the point where you control your environment. But it's very, very difficult to do if you rely on other people. And our reliances are made more difficult when we have all these false and manufactured wants. The only thing we need, one of the things that I found out is by running, and this is a discovery that was recent, a couple of things that I've sort of discovered. Number one is that because I run, and I run almost every day, I haven't run in the last 7 days because I've come up with a cough, and I think it's from exhaustion because in the month of November, I took about 500,000 steps. And in the month of December, I took just under 20,000 steps, and below that, about 480,000 steps. And in the month of January, by the middle of the month, I was already at around 320,000, which really puts me at a clip of 10,000 a day. So, it's not like not having run for 7 days is really bad in my book. I mean, I want to get back to it, but here's what I'm leading to. Since I've done this consistently over the past 4-5 years, is that I have trained my body. I have conditioned my body to basically function at a higher level. That's number one. But what is my body? We think of our body as the outside, what we see here, what we project, we don't really think about our insides very much. But our bodies are like cars, okay? We have an exhaust system, we have an air conditioning system, we have a fuel system, a fuel intake system. I don't know a lot about cars, and even that's about as far as electrical systems. But all in all, our bodies have 11 systems. So when you are engaged in moderately intense cardiovascular activity, what you are doing is you are engaging all 11 systems. You can ask AI what the 11 systems are. Okay, I'll list a few. I know the cardiovascular system, the reproductive system, digestive system, the bronchial system, or breathing system, whatever. The skin system has a special name. I can't remember. The skeletal system, the muscular system, you know, the urinary system, and so on. Uh, Maybe women actually have 12 and men have 11. That's actually, I need to look into that because occasionally I talk to AI, not for entertainment purposes, but just to sort of find answers to questions that I've had. Um, and I've been that way again since I was little. My grandmother on my father's side. One time I asked her a question that I didn't. I said, Grammy, why does ice cream melt and soup get cold? I didn't know. She goes, oh, you don't. Oh, you ask these weird questions, and I always ask weird questions. Or I ask questions. They're not necessarily weird. They're questions. There's no weird question. There's just questions. Um, so all 11 systems benefit, but what does that mean? Well, it means that I am what you see out here is the benefit of what I have taken care of inside. In other words, if you take care of the insides, that will manifest outwards. And this goes to something that I've tried to talk about with regards to the definition of God. Okay, is that a lot of people look towards the outside for their answer. God in the sky, in the book. They dig their heads and they think that the secret to life is all is written in the book. First of all, I will say that you know God's language doesn't exist on a higher plane. Language is unnecessary. As creatures, we use language not to communicate. We use language to control. That's what language is about. It's about controlling. And that's why people say the word of God, because they want to control you. And they want to control you because it satisfies their own needs, their insecurities, it satisfies their ego, it satisfies their greed. Everybody is wants to take care of themselves, but they want to take care of themselves not by taking care of themselves, but by using you. By using you. Put my finger up there. You. Okay. So do yourself a favor. Do yourself a favor. If you drink alcohol, stop. Just stop. And stopping is here. It's all here. All you have to say is, I'm done. If you lose friends for it, so be it. You don't need those friends. Okay? Because why do we want to destroy ourselves for the pleasure of other people? And this is something that I've struggled to understand. Why did I behave this way? And I know that a lot of the behavior was taught. The exalts gave me bad examples. I would see them partying, drinking, smoking, gambling. These are things that I saw when I was little. And so these are things that I learned, and these are things that I thought, made me more of a man or whatever. And all that is bullshit too. All these male and female stereotypes, these are all manufactured. Race doesn't even exist. It doesn't exist. Scientifically, race is not a thing. So if race is not a thing, how can there be racism? There is cultural bigotry. There is bigotry and prejudice based on the nature of a person's skin and the physiological appearance, or the type of hair that they have, or whatever, the types of noses they have, or the teeth, or whatever it is, the condition that a person has. There are other people that'll look at that and develop concepts in their brain that everybody creates their own universe in their head, but that universe that they create is really based on all the information that they received as they were growing up. And a lot of people that you meet have grown up in very, very small bubbles They're very limited areas. They haven't been exposed. Even if you lived in, like, say, New York City, there people who have lived in New York City haven't lived everywhere. They're definitely exposed to more than, say, a person that grows up in Columbia, Missouri, which is, where I've lived for several years. But the but and so this is so I've conditioned my body, and I function at a higher level. I create my own energy. I don't rely on energy drinks. I don't rely on caffeine. I don't rely on anything. I just do the very basics. If I have some water, that's good enough, because I don't look at my body as a repository. I look at it as a filter. And when I think about what I do when I run, is that I am basically telling the kids inside, number one, get to work. The enzymes are activated, the bacteria is activated. Everybody has to work when I work. So I control the game inside here, and it takes care of itself out here. People look at me and they say, "Wow, you look pretty decent for your age." Well, that's actually, and again, this is a byproduct, and it wasn't sort of like I had a vision of something that I wanted to accomplish or anything like that. I mean, I didn't know that I wanted to lose weight, but all of this has been very sort of accidental. There's another thing that I noticed about myself, and that is because my life has really been chaotic for the most part, with very little stability, even from a very young age. I'm more comfortable with chaos than I am with order. Because, and then again, order is really an attempt to control. Okay, now there has to be some type of order in certain realms, but I do think that if every individual manages to take care of themselves and are able to control themselves, then the cooperation between those types of individuals is much more valuable than the relationship between people who are interdependent, who depend on one another. Okay, I am not completely independent. I'm not rich. Like I said, I don't like money. I try to get by with as little money as possible. Okay. And I also expand my orbit as much as I can. So I don't like to remain in one place. I like to move. I like to go. I like to see different things. You know, I spread myself out and around, and I've been moving and doing that. And this is something that actually that pleases me, makes other people uncomfortable, but that's not my problem. Because comfort, I am uncomfortable being comfortable. It's the easiest way to put it. I am uncomfortable being comfortable. So it's not just billionaires that are greedy. Millionaires are greedy. People who make, even poor people are greedy. Why do you think? What is it that you see a homeless person that has nothing? Why would they push around a shopping cart full of junk? It's because they've been conditioned to think that we need things to have our identity. But we don't need things to have our identity. I think I went off track on just one thing here that I want you to notice. Oh, in the conversation, a religious person. And I said, you have to believe. No, I have a God in a way. So I don't have to believe anything. I already have a God. I am spiritually, I'm spiritually secure. I don't need a middleman. I don't need a proxy. I don't need a prophylactic to protect myself. I am out and in the open. Okay. So the best way, or something that you want to consider, is to look at yourself, look at your wants, and figure out what are the ones that really matter. I just finished watching uh, Baby Reindeer. Again, I don't watch a lot. Occasionally, I watch something. I actually started watching a long time, and I couldn't because it was very disturbing to me. And the very first episode, I was just, ugh, this is just disgusting. But I finished watching it last night, and that was kind of one of the things that was happening in that gentleman's life was, this lack of control and looking for answers outside when the answer isn't outside. The answer is inside, inside here. This is your central command. This is where feelings start. This, this, this. When I run, I send more oxygen to my brain. I have more blood in my brain, and my brain can process things more, and it can look at things more, and I can open up my mind more because I am exercising my body. Another thing I want to share on that front again, and I think this was more subconscious, or no, it was semi-conscious, I guess would be the best way to say it, is that when I decided to start running, my decision was to run for 90 minutes at least. Why 90 minutes? If you ever watched a soccer game, the players run for 90 minutes, 45 minutes, and 45 minutes. A human, a, a creature, a sentient creature, is running for 90 minutes. And if you look at soccer players as far as their physique, I mean, they're in good shape. Well, that's the reason they're in good shape because, well, they run. I don't know if they. I don't know how much they run every day or anything like that. And I might have actually gotten myself sick because I might have overexerted myself. And I'm going to take care of that. I have been taking care of. I haven't gotten devastatingly sick, but I'm not running because I don't want to overtax my system. I have to learn how to moderate that. But I called this the meaning of life, right? In many ways, what I'm saying to you is that you create the meaning, but you can't create it unless you know who you are. And you can't know who you are unless you dig deep, unless you challenge yourself daily. Daily, you want to challenge yourself. You want to look and say and know that almost everything around you is trying to control you. Rewards and punishments, false dichotomies. Things are not black or white. You've always heard that. Nothing is black or white. We live in the nebula of chaos. And order is not sustainable in chaos. That's why empires fall. Because the only utopia that exists is right here. I have not smiled more in my life than I have smiled over the last year, despite all the garbage, despite all the nonsense. Okay? The answer is not Republican or Democrat, neither of the two. Okay? That is like a good cop, bad cop scenario. It's a false dichotomy. False, completely false. But still, most people don't see it because everybody sees it from their own position. As if you are wealthy, if you are comfortable, if you are successful, then you arrogantly believe that you know the answer when you really don't. The only answer is how you take care of yourself. When we have more people that are independent, that know how to work together without labels, that's when we're going to make some advances. But right now, this is a very bad situation where we have people who are very, very self centered, very materialistic, very focused on their own personal comfort and their own arrogance and their own narcissism and their own ego, okay, that they will do anything, anything to protect that. The Bible is as a foundation an authoritarian premise. Obey me or be punished. That's it. Obey me or be punished. That is an artifice. That is artificial. That is what the leader of the tribe says. Obey me or be punished. Obey me or be banished, sent out of paradise. If you believe in Jesus, and I don't need a spiritual middleman, okay? But if you really think about what happened, he didn't die for our sins. Again, if this even happened, he died because he defied authority. It's a different fucking message, okay? It's a different message. Authority does not have to, he would get the merchants upset. He would get whoever the tax people were, so he would get the kings and the leaders upset because they told them that they didn't have authority, that their authority was false. They assert authority and they bully people. They intimidate you. They mock you to make you feel less and to make themselves feel more, to make themselves feel greater, because again, everybody wants to satisfy their own needs. I watched another movie that I thought was very good. And I'm trying to think of the quote right now. It's the Peanut Butter Falcon. Oh, friends are the family you choose. If they tell you, familiarity breeds contempt. In other words, the more familiar people are with you, or the more comfortable they feel in the relationship with you, the more comfortable they feel using you and abusing you, mocking you and deriding you. Why? For their own benefit, for their own ego, for their own sense of self-worth. I think I have said as much as I can think about at this point in time. If you listen to this and if you have a question, certainly ask. Now, I want to, so the, if you ask me, what's the answer? What's the answer? I kind of already told you. The answer is here. And it's not here. You have to find it. One thing that I feel very comfortable saying, again, and I don't feel comfortable with comfort, is that I will never know who I am. I don't want to know who I am in many respects. I want to find out who I am. I always want to be on that journey. The path to enlightenment is littered with broken glass, dead end detours, and rotten fruit. And the trail is blazed with blood, sweat, and tears. It is a chamber of chaos. Think about it. And say we come from a big bang. So what's a big bang except for an explosion where shit's going in every which way? That's what's going on. Shit's going in every which way. We don't even know which way it's going. And that sort of, oh, is the other thing that I was thinking, that God is not outside, that we are a part of God. We weren't created, we create things. Gods don't create shit. Gods are. So we are a fractal. We are a piece of God. And this time that we have is the time where we sort of exercise our muscles and sort of leave to see, is it better or is it worse? I like the Talking Head song. It says, heaven is a place where nothing ever happens or never happens. And an absolute is an absolute. It doesn't have a need, it doesn't have feelings, it just is. And there is an is, and there is an isn't in that respect. And I don't even know if that's true. The other thing I want to say about the Bible is if you really pay attention, I mean, what it shows you more, especially, is the incredible amount of dysfunction that we represent. It's like we're dysfunctional, period. We have to learn to get along, but getting along is not trying to control the other person. If you turn a belief into a system, you have destroyed the organic nature of the belief, because a belief cannot be a system. If it's a system, it is an effort to control. The name of the game is control. And if you cannot control yourself, you're screwed. You're screwed. What do you want to control yourself for? You want to control yourself, I guess, to live a life as happy as you can live your life, knowing that happiness is not a permanent condition. You create your happy moments. I create my happy moments all the time. I smile, like I said, more than I ever have in my entire life. I smile for pictures because I'm happy with myself. That's it. I hope you get something out of this. Take care.